Don't get too arrogant with your successes and don't get too bogged down with your failures. Learn the lesson, move on, make a better product. That's all there is to it.
And that can only be done if you have a long-term view. If you have patience, you have capital, and you have the technical capabilities.
We raised from 53 angel investors before our first strategic investor.
How can these overburdened, underfunded utilities find their way through the sort of Washington maze to get the money?
Because the most dangerous thing you can do, especially in our industry, is to be stagnant.
There's plenty of money, but no bankable projects.
You know, we're the least happy with our product because we had to just launch it before I wanted to. You know, it's like, oh, I could make it better if I had another year, but you can't. You have to get it in front of customers.
The most expensive water is no water.
May I ask one additional question to that?
No.
Please.
How do you get non-bankable utilities to access funding is the biggest challenge for SDG 6.
Government has no business being in business.
I think this is the only way to overtake the flaws of a mixed model. There are many flaws in the public model, and there are many flaws in a fully private model.
If they are not able to recover their investments, they will not invest, and they will just stop and just run the concession to the ground.
The water industry needs to be planned and thought of in the long term, and water investments need to be deployed for the long term. There is no urgency that is good for the sector. I think that we all need to look with a long-term approach.
Hello everybody, we are in a pretty fancy setup today. Hi Björn.
Hey Antoine, where are we?
I think it's the Global Water Summit, well I'm pretty sure, and they have this ambitious topic which is creating a climate for growth. And there's a ton in this show today. We have lots of good nuggets, and actually it's because we are following the vertical of the water industry. Where are we starting?
The vertical starts with technology. So we are going with the breakthrough technology of the year. We will have them on the couch here. We will figure out what makes them really successful. The next one is clearly the utility. We have the water reuse project of the year. And end of the food chain, well, we have the water company of the year with us. And we will figure out whether they are an integrator, EPC, what are they really? And that will be interesting.
We also have the tech idol, and we might have a little bit of a surprise at the end of the show. So you better want to stay tuned until the end. We gave you the title, we gave you the awards they won, but you have no clue which company won what. So let's find out. First, we got the Tech Idol contest. At each Global Water Summit, it's an institution. Tom Pankratz and a set of desalters and desalination specialists he assembles in a jury welcome a group of hand-picked promising tech startups and scale-ups for them to pitch, receive tricky questions, hopefully answer them right, and get evaluated by both the room and the jury. This year, we saw Magrathea Metals, Salinity Solutions, Nanotechnologies, Active Membrane and Membrane on stage. I had somewhat skin in that game because the only alumni of my podcast in that list was Greg Newblum from Membrane, so I was ecstatic when he received the People's Choice Award, but the jury's verdict was still to come. Later that night at the Global Water Awards, the suspense ended with the Tech Idol 2023 winner finally revealed.
Active Membrane!
Congrats to Arian Edalat, CEO and co-founder. He not only won a prize, but also the pleasure of getting to speak with us in a minute. Well, you'll have to ask him if that's positive or negative. But to complete our Cool Kids panel and get a sound understanding of the challenges for tech companies to take their business off in the water sector in 2023, we also wanted to speak with companies at the direct next growth stage. Hence the focus on the Breakthrough Technology Company of the Year. In a close call with runner-up Pani, this award went to the brilliant ZwitterCo, and that's how we're also having the two co-founders Chris Drover and Alex Rappaport joining us in 3, 2, 1. Back to the studio. Okay, if I have to put like a buzzword on what we have right now, it's a cool kid panel. We have the coolest kid because you won the Tech Idol, and we have the other cool kids. Björn, can you introduce our guest?
It's a Breakthrough Technology Company of the Year. We have ZwitterCo with us, Chris Drover. Welcome, Chris. And we have Alex Rappaport. Welcome, Alex. And the other cool kid you mentioned, well, is Arian Edalat. He won the Water Technology Idol yesterday. So congrats, first of all. Great to have you all with us today, the new kids on the block.
If I try to put you in a box, you would be cool kid level 1, like it's awesome, and you would be cool kid level 2. Is that somewhat right in terms of how you are in your entrepreneurship journey?
If I want to put it into a pop version. We are new kids on the block.
Okay.
And these guys are more like Backstreet Boys.
Oh.
So that's,
Don't ask us which one is which.
which one is which.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We're gonna have so much street cred, you have no idea.
that's essential. But yes, you're right. I'll let them talk. But we are very early stage. We're seeking a seed investment at this point. We have a proof of concept. We have done some field testing, and we're seeking a seed investment to scale up the technology into a next level, build out a manufacturing facility, and so on and so forth. Where these gentlemen are a couple of steps ahead on.
Let's stay a second with you. Yesterday on the contestants at the Tech Idol, there were companies which were at different stages. Some were even earlier stages than yours. Some were later stage, like your runner-up, Greg Newbloom from Membrian, and still you won. That must mean something.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, it's a great recognition for the work that we've done so far. But I think more in a sense of the nature of our technology, which is a membrane technology that can make any desalination system work more efficiently with more sustainably, more cost effectively, and so on and so forth. I think it's a reflection of that, as well as the work that we've done, which is amazing at this stage for us, is very helpful for us because we are at the stage where any sort of recognition would help with that overall goal of securing enough market presence and exposure for potential investors to come in and validate us.
Every step counts.
When you're earlier stage, it's very difficult to seek that funding, whereas you're more de-risked along the way. You either have to do it through grants, which we are doing, governmental grants, but if you want to accelerate your journey and become commercialized, it's inevitable to attract a few $1 million to build the necessary infrastructure that you need to commercialize that technology. And that's where we are. It's a tricky situation to be in, so we welcome any recognition. And it's heartwarming as well, because as an entrepreneur, you always look into this sort of recognitions of your work, tells you that you're on the right path, because it can be a very lonely journey, as you made.
And I have a cool quote from you. You gave me, you said clearly there are easier ways to make money, but clearly water is too important to not to do it.
I love money, but I do not have it.
I mean, guys like us who do these kind of things, we are driven people and we are mission people. We believe that...
I get goosebumps.
Me too, but we believe that we can do something, because the most dangerous thing you can do, especially in our industry, is to be stagnant. We can't afford to be stagnant. To do that, to come up with a new thing, to rethink things how they've done, as these guys have done, and as we are doing, it takes some guts. There are easier ways of doing it, but it's not as fulfilling, because when you do something like this, which has a positive impact on the environment that we all live in, that's very fulfilling to me, and I'm sure to these guys as well.
You mentioned the millions of dollars which you might need at some point on your path. Well, we have the largest Series A in the history of the water sector.
33 million.
What does that change on your path?
It changes everything.
Don't tell me everything. Let's be a bit more specific.
Quarterly board meetings and slightly more expectations. But what Arian was saying is absolutely right. I mean, even the initial proof points, we also had to pull in some of that early seed money, right? So we had about 5 million through a combination of angel investors who really resonated with the impact story of what we were trying to do. We had some early stage strategic investors who were able to place the technology's performance in the context of what they understood for conventional membrane products. And that was what we were able to use to get our first products to market, because those points of evidence, that validation in the field, is so critical to being able to get the partnerships, the flywheel effect of people really excited about where the technology can go. These points of validation early on are so pivotal, because it's hardware. Hardware's expensive. You have to go through the scale-up challenges. You have to have deployable field systems. You have to have field teams that can help actually operate those kinds of pilots that are so pivotal in our industry. Fast forward to the Series A that we raised, we have now international expansion. We have the idea of new product development and the capabilities that we need to be able to have to really expedite and accelerate how we can take initial concept into prototype or commercial ready product for all sorts of new capabilities that our chemistry unlocks. So it's still that same kind of, how do you validate, how do you demonstrate with as capital light and efficient of process as possible, but now just on a little bit bigger, grander scale.
95% of all startups will fail during the first years.
Oh, some good news.
So what is the secret sauce that you are right now here, that you won the award, that you raised 33 million, you raised 5 million, or you will raise 5 million, something like that? What is the secret sauce, guys? What can other startups learn from you? What can they copy paste?
I think, as most people in this industry will appreciate and will tell you, in water in particular, it's just so important to get products in front of customers early, often, and nonstop. As technologists, you have to resist that urge to want to just perfect everything in the lab as perfectly as you can. I think most people will agree water is not an industry where there's like radical new products coming out every year. If you have something new, something that's a step change, that's better than what's out there, you have to kind of, as an engineer, fight that urge to want to, I can keep tinkering and tinkering and tinkering for years on end and making it better and better and better.
It's not ready yet.
What do you mean it's not ready yet?
You have to accept that, once you have that step up of and sort of introduce a new capability to market, you need to go to market with it and validate it and make sure that your understanding of how it's going to fit into the market, who the end users are going to be, what your business model is going to be. Are you selling to end users? Are you selling in partnership with EPCs or other players in the industry? The only way to figure those things out is to go be in the market. To the extent that we figured out any form of secret sauce,
I don't think we revealed on a little tiny show like this one here.
Just kidding.
we really focused on just getting our products out onto customer sites. We're the least happy with our product because we had to just launch it before I wanted to. It's like, I could make it better if I had another year, but you can't. You have to get it in front of customers.
So it's a kind of lean startup process.
Exactly. Yeah.
You'll tell me if it's over the top. If it is, I will cut it out, I promise. But is it something you learned the hard way?
It is, that's fair, yes. I spent a couple years with Oasis Water, forward osmosis. That was kind of my entry into the water market and into membranes. I wasn't in a founding role or leadership role there. I just kind of came in, what's this technology? Great, I'm going to work on it, and joined the R&D team and had a great time there. As I think many in the industry will recall, FO kind of came out and was like a really like, this is going to change everything.
There are some details still to be worked out, of course.
And there was a lot of attention on FO before there were the market proof points. It's a good example of a technology that probably showed, based on lab performance, there was more hope of what it could be. And that was something that, resonated with me really deeply as I met Alex and we were talking about, how are we going to go to market? And, you can run fouling tests in your lab for years on end, but it's very wary of that. From that perspective, a lot of other technologies look really great too. What changes is you get to some viable production scale and you just get membranes onto sites. That was really the inflection for ZwitterCo, both in the team size, the traction, the capital raise. We had membranes out, on customer sites, processing water every day, very happy end users, realizing the value benefits. There's just this inflection.
It always comes again to whatever you say is fundraising. Every second census, you said it a couple of times, you said it. I mean, you raised 33 million. What are the three things every startup has to do to convince a financial investor to get some money out?
How do they do it? Come on, what's the trick? How do they do it?
One of the things that's never on your side, whether it's fundraising or sales or product development, is time. These are long, intensive processes. So it really behooves the entrepreneur to crispen that story. What is value? How is your technology producing value? How is that resonating with your customers, with your partners? And how does that value story speak to the larger global macro narrative that particularly funding partners, especially those who have an impact mission behind their allocation of capital, really want to know that they're getting that double or triple bottom line benefit, and being able to contextualize the 10,000 foot view down into the microscopic view of here's a particular circumstance and conditions at a very detailed level that make this transformative for this user base. Going one step higher, what that means for the industry, going one step higher, what that means for how this is going to evolve your business over time, and then what could be that return on investment at a planetary scale. I mean, you really have to be able to go through all of those stages of sort of reframing the narrative. And that's an exercise that just takes a lot of data points. We raised from 53 angel investors before our first strategic investor. And that meant that I was just having hundreds of conversations, each one an opportunity to get feedback, crispen why we're trying to do what we're doing, understand where it connects and where that resonance comes from, double, triple all of that with all of the customer discovery that was going on throughout that time. The sales process will be challenging. The time it takes to get references and deployments will be challenging, but all throughout that experience, you still have to be extremely precise and accelerated in your learning. And you have to find ways to get that learning engine from real-time feedback and putting that narrative out there and perfecting it as you go.
I need to jump in with my 2 feet forward because we have tech-savvy people which are watching this and they wouldn't let me just have cool kids on the same sofa and not ask about your technology. I've seen your presentation yesterday and there were plus and minuses within the membrane. I've had you on my podcast some weeks ago and we discussed how the Zwitter German words stands for these Zwitter ions, which have this special capability to be at the same time positively and negatively charged. I'm just wondering, is it the same technology which you're developing, the two companies?
No.
Yeah, that's the short answer.
That's the short answer. But
Okay, that was a stupid question, wasn't it? Yeah.
what we do is a little bit different than what they're doing. We're building on an existing form factor of membrane, which is a spiral wound. The step change that we're bringing about is that so far the membranes have relied on upstream processes, the pretreatment processes, to operate sustainably. They see the water they see, they indiscriminately separate whatever they see, and you know, if the upstream processes are not efficient enough, they get fouled and their performance, you know, takes a hit. We've changed that in the most simplest form. We've made a few changes to the design of the membrane as well as the design of the module, so we can apply a low potential, low current electricity to the surface of the membrane, charge the surface of the membrane. And by doing so, we're giving the membrane the power to take anti-scaling and anti-fouling in its own hand. It's not in the chemistry of the membrane, it's in the way the entire module is optimized and works, right? And by doing so, the membrane will operate at a higher recovery, it fouls less, and the scales less. It would require less pretreatment, but it's a desalination membrane at the end of it. What these guys are doing, they're working on the chemistry. I believe, they may disagree, but I believe that there are complementary methods concentrating on challenging pretreatments that we are not. We're concentrating on different aspects of fouling because that's where we think our technology fits best, at least for the beachhead markets, and that's what we do.
I saw you nodding. So do you agree on the fact that you're complementary?
Absolutely. To borrow your analogy, I'd say we're a little more interested in reinventing the wheel, perhaps than Arian. ZwitterCo is fundamentally a material science company and a material science platform. We have a new type of chemistry to make membranes out of. This is really exciting. So if you sort of look back through the history of membranes, there's been a lot of innovation in the industry. There's been a lot of improvements. We've seen, just looking at RO, for instance, we've seen the energy profile just come down and down and down over the years, but the materials we're using are still fundamentally the same materials we've been using for a couple decades: polyamides, polysulfones, PVDFs. What ZwitterCo is doing is sort of introducing another tool to the toolbox. Anybody that's been in membranes will understand that hydrophilic surfaces are sort of the name of the game to prevent fouling. And there's been a lot of great effort over the years to make everything from, polyether sulfone membranes and a lot of the other technologies out there, different surface treatments, different techniques to make them more hydrophilic and make them more effective. But you sort of eventually the diminishing returns kick in. I mean, fundamentally, you're dealing with a plastic, and plastic is not exactly a really hydrophilic material. So what ZwitterCo uses these Zwitter ions, as you mentioned, the positive and negative charges. The major difference here is that ours is really, that's a molecular level phenomenon. So we have positive and negative charges. Those charges are a couple angstroms apart. They're in the same molecule.
I never thought I would hear the word angstrom.
Yes.
On this show, but
this separation of charges is occurring really at that level. Active is using charge, which, charge is a really fundamental part of chemistry and how ions and different materials move together. There's just a different order of magnitude of the scale of, how far apart those charges are separated. For ZwitterCo, one of the obvious challenges, when you have a really, really hydrophilic material, the logical extreme of that is it dissolves in water. And so that's kind of long been one of the challenges working with Zwitter ions is, sure, we can maybe coat it onto a membrane and it'll make the membrane more hydrophilic for a little while, and then it's going to wash off.
It's really watered down,
ZwitterCo's IP and our innovation is how to build materials that are stable, that can be processed like normal plastics, and sort of use a lot of the advanced manufacturing techniques we have that we can control to form membranes and pore structure that still preserve that incredibly hydrophilic material, but don't let it run away off into the water we're trying to treat. We have one membrane out on the market today, which we call superfiltration. We felt it was really a little bit of a different ballgame from the nanofiltration and the ultrafiltration that's out there. It's targeted into different applications, and the industry's built up perceptions of what an NF is for. For instance, we needed to make sure we help people understand that you should be thinking about this differently. But we expect to launch, as Alex mentioned, more membranes over the next couple of years. This is a chemistry platform in the same way that polyamides are a platform, and you can have everything from NF to low energy to high rejection. There's a lot of variations there. So we're excited as we deploy the money we've raised to start to introduce more variations of the membrane that are better fits for different applications.
Arian, you told me that, you are a startup, you have to move forward, fast forward, right? Because the time is always against you. Time is always against the startup, right? You are dealing with utilities. How does it fit? We all know they are not the fastest one.
They are not. No, especially if they're international. You got to pick your battles because you have limited amount of time. Most boringly, you have very limited amount of money, especially in the earlier stages. So you have to spend that money wisely and you have to spend your time wisely. Those are the two resources you have as an entrepreneur at the earlier stages before the millions come in. So you got to use those wisely. Those are the only tools you have in your pocket with a great technology, of course, but you are what you make of that technology. What I have done throughout our journey is to concentrate on high impact projects, grants, field pilot grants with agencies, for the sake of argument, that can create that publicity for us, as well as create the result for us, so we can actually kill a number of birds with one stone. That's how you spend your time. Pick your battles. Pick high impact, high PR, high marketing, high value projects to support your earlier stage.
But how do you select that? You get tons of emails. Everybody wants to pilot your technology. I have seen this a couple of times. How are you so selective that you choose the right one?
You create the sense over time of who's worth spending time on and who's not. For me, it has been going after grants that I know. The people behind it, I know them. I know that, if I associated myself with those grants, with our technology, with those grants, with those opportunities, and if we succeed in securing those are the biggest bang for the buck for us. Obviously, I get several emails from people, but, over time, you receive an email from a potential entrepreneur in an area and in a market you don't know, in a country you don't know. Obviously, the person you don't know, nobody knows that person, then obviously don't spend time on it. But if I know the person, if I know who's behind a project, if I know where it's heading, and if I have a clear vision, that is where I'm going to spend my limited resource, both in terms of cash and time on. And that's what we've done in the earlier stages of active membranes. We went after things like Department of Energy. We went after United States Bureau of Reclamation grants. These are the grants that I know the people behind it. We know the value. We know the value of the data that we can generate, and then how we can accentuate that data when we generate it. So it's just about be disciplined about it, choose wisely, know the people behind it, know the project, and just plan around it. Awards and glory is fine, but when you wake up the next day, you still have a monumental task ahead of you, and it's not going to get any easier. You just your responsibility gets a little bit more. So don't get too arrogant with your successes, and don't get too bogged down with your failures. Learn the lesson, move on, make a better product. That's all there is to it.
Oh, that was so amazing.
I think that's a strong message and something we probably will discuss with our next guest, because we will be discussing with a public water agency. So what you just said about this flagship project and what you should be targeting is something we'll ask. Later in this show, you'll have the Water Company of the Year. If you don't know yet who it is, I won't reveal, so you have to stay until the end. But maybe if you have one sentence, because it's an EPC, and we might discuss if they are an EPC or not, but in the food chain, they are the company on top of your tech companies. So it's your customer. It's also the one which can put your adoption on steroids, or honestly, who can kill you. They might have a hard time, but they can try. If you want to target that win-win and work in a good synergy, what's your message to that category of players in a couple of sentences?
I think you said one sentence before. I'll see if I can really keep it constrained. Channels are friends, especially in this marketplace where the end user is going to experience the value, but to be a technology provider and to really push the boundaries on a single unit process, you need to recognize those benefits in an integrated process framework. So we have to be friends and be able to deliver not just a way that channel can now create immense value for their customer base, providing new capabilities and new ways to get to outcomes like water reuse or product valorization that were otherwise not possible. So we need to make them be as successful as they can in their business and keep and hone that strategic edge, and also find and connect with the end users whose pain is so acute. Wells are running dry, can't expand production, have severe regulatory challenges, and are looking, have that emotional connection to the idea of water reuse, but have just never known where to find the tools. And if you can find those end users and we can find the channels who are excited to sort of mobilize their teams around investing in new technology and new applications development, it's a pretty harmonious triangle, right? So we help find the end users, we help find the channel partners, and it's been wildly successful for us. So
it's an harmonious triangle, but we love confrontation on that show. So do you have a tricky question for the Water Company of the Year? And I promise we will raise it.
I would challenge any EPC technology integration firm that wants to be technology pioneering, that wants to be innovative, to think through the process that they have, not necessarily the idea, but the actual process they follow to introduce new technologies. How do they think about the level of resource commitment? How do they think about the stage gates? How do they think about the level of commercial visibility they're willing to give a new technology while it's still in its evaluation phases? Everyone wants to be innovative, but innovation takes risk, it takes work. And I think we've found there's definitely a breed of systems provider who is really excited and knows what it takes to go through that applications evaluation development process. And usually you can ask them, what's your process? And they'll have an answer for it.
That's a good one.
That's a perfect one.
Guys, thank you very much for being here. Again, congrats for winning these awards. Thank you again, and have a safe trip home, guys.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, guys.
So we told you we would have the entire value chain on the couch with us today. Our cool kids are somewhat at the bottom, with only suppliers like me with my piping systems still one step below. These tech companies build systems that need to be integrated and assembled to ultimately deliver value to the end users, the ones on top of that food chain. But what drives the king of the water jungle? What are the challenges that end users, authorities, and utilities actually strive to solve in 2023? Are they the engines of change, the passive spectators, or the gatekeepers that prevent any evolution? Well, our guest will for sure be able to provide many answers. Patrick Lester was indeed awarded not once, but twice during the Global Water Awards. The first one as the
winner of the Public Water Agency of the Year is Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System Regulatory Office. Well done.
The second as the Water Reuse Project of the Year. Okay, that one wasn't directly for him, but for his concessionaire company, Arian Edalat, and he received it on their behalf. But can a concessionaire win on such ambitious goals without a strong nudge from its local authority? Well, Patrick will tell us in a minute. And if we add to the pot that his other concessionaire, Manila Water, won the Water Company of the Year award in 2022, well, we can conjecture that whether Patrick and the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System Regulatory Office are very lucky, or propose that lightning doesn't fall twice on the same spot by chance. Where's the truth in that? Let's find out, and let's welcome Patrick Lester on the set. So as you saw, we have a guest with us, and maybe you recognized him at the award ceremony because he was on stage not once, but twice. And that's maybe because it's the most successful water privatization in history of World Bank.
We have here Patrick Lester. He is the chief regulator from, and now I have to read that, Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewage System Regulatory Office from the Philippines. Welcome, Patrick. Good to have you here. And first of all, congrats, because you won yesterday 2 awards. You are the Water Regulator of the Year, and you won also the award for the Water Reuse Project of the Year. How cool is that?
Just like to clarify, all right? We won one award, and one of our concessionaires won the second award, and I just received it on their behalf.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Congrats. Hopefully you had a great party, because to go home with 2 awards must be really great.
Yeah.
So we all might have a little party.
We weren't expecting this, and we were really surprised to win not just one, but 2 awards. So
Let's start with the one which you won in your name. What's the story?
the story there is the MWS's regulatory office is in charge of regulating the 2 concessionaires. Right now, everybody knows it's easier to push for water, but nobody is pushing for wastewater. The MWS's regulatory office started a few years ago, and we started pushing the 2 concessionaires to start their investments in wastewater.
Maybe just the 2 concessionaire was
Manila Water and Maynilad.
Okay.
Yes, Maynilad is the one who won the second award. Manila Water actually won the Water Company of the Year award last year.
Okay, so you're very proud of your 2 concessionaires.
Of course.
So you pushed them into wastewater, and then what
Yes.
happened?
So I'm pushing them to wastewater. And before, just like to give you a brief background, when the water privatization started, there's really no wastewater sewage system in Manila. After the privatization, we were able to expand it a little because the main focus then was water.
True.
So before, it was around only half of Metro Manila has potable water.
Mhm.
Now it's around 95%. That's a very big achievement.
In how long?
Took them around 15 to 20 years to get there. But majority of the problem is solved. I'm not saying that all of the problems have been solved, but we're getting there. And it's just the last mile. And everyone's actually forgetting about wastewater. I took it upon myself to ask the two of them to focus also on wastewater.
Mm-hmm.
At first, the two of them were kind of hesitant because it's easier for people to accept a higher tariff rate for water. But how are they going to recover their expenses, their investments in wastewater?
Oh, that's shit. I'm not doing that.
So we devised a way for them to be able to recover their investments. It's a novel way, and we made it conditional. We allowed them to increase their tariff up to a certain point every time they reach benchmark, if they reach a certain threshold of their sewer coverage.
Let me try to check if I understand that. That means you are limiting their income as long as they don't reach certain targets. They can't charge more. So if they want to be able to recover their cost, they need also to walk the talk and to upgrade their technical treatment.
Exactly.
Very clever.
So I used the environmental charge. Before, it's around 20%. I told them that I'm going to allow them to increase their environmental charge based on their coverage, how many households are now connected to the sewage treatment plants in Metro Manila, because a majority are still not connected. While waiting for that, we push for septage management, or basically desludging, while waiting for that time that we will be able to achieve around universal access to sewerage.
I mean, that bridge directly what you did with a project, Water Reuse Project of the Year, because there you are doing directly potable water from wastewater.
Exactly.
Tell us about that.
Maynila has still some pockets of problems in their concession areas, that they are having difficulty in providing potable water because of the location of these areas from the water source. So they started exploring water reuse. What are they're doing right now is they're getting water from the sewage treatment plant and directly treating it in their modular treatment plants and directly delivering this to their customers. This is actually the first in Asia to do direct potable reuse, and I think this is only the third in the entire world that's doing direct potable reuse.
How do you convince the people? Because, I mean, we all know about that. We directly toilet to tap, but it's in his head.
Don't say toilet to tap.
Okay,
that expression doesn't exist. We kill it.
Okay, we killed it, but we have it still in our head.
We should not!
And not we, but let's say the ordinary people.
You are no different from the peasants.
Who is out there and is getting the portable. So how do you convince the people with this concept? Because it's great.
Let me double down on this question. How do you do better than Singapore? Because Singapore could be delivering their water straight away. It's potable. It's just that they believed they could not convince the people. So they go for this additional treatment of new water going back into the reservoirs.
It's the same with California. Even there, they put it back to the reservoir. So you will be the first one who's going directly. How to convince the people, how to take them with. I think that is here really the golden nugget for all the others, to copy-paste exactly that.
No pressure.
No pressure on that.
One of the reasons how we were able to convince them is basically more of a communication. We are being transparent to them and explaining how the process is working. We are starting at a small scale first to roll it out properly. And the most important really is that we targeted the areas that have problems with water and is suffering water shortage problems. So they are more prone to accept this project and basically forget about all of this psychological, social hindrance in rolling out direct potable reuse.
Because they're facing really the problem on a daily basis.
So they have already paid. So you took that and say, hey, this is a solution. Due to the fact that you are solving the problem for them, they would accept that more. What would be the next step? I mean, you want to roll out that, right? To the other people which are maybe not have the pain so much.
There's still some more areas that we can expand. I think the main goal would be to show to the public that this is a proven concept, that it's working already in these portions of the country, in the capital, and there's no problem. We are always on top of things, and we are constantly monitoring the water quality. Those are the things that we need to roll out the messaging across to the consumers, showing to them, hey, this is working. And there has been no complaints.
No complaints.
And this is part of circular economy. So it's actually very good for the environment. This is good for you. This is good for the country as a whole.
But what about the tariffs? That was the big idea.
That is actually a major problem because of the cost. So that's why we can't really scale it up as much as we want to. We're just going to increase it step by step, but it won't be a major component of the entire pie. So basically, probably we're targeting around like 10% of the total, the water that's being delivered to the consumer. probably around 10%. So we can dilute the cost to everyone and share the burden to everyone. The most expensive water is no water.
Exactly.
That's very important.
That could be a perfect conclusion, but I don't want to conclude here because I have so many more questions. If we zoom out a bit, you mentioned this 95% coverage in terms of drinking water. With this direct potable reuse, do you reach the 100%?
We might be able to, but we're trying to scale it down and do it slowly. We don't want to rush things, because we want to make sure that we do it right. Because if we don't do it right now, it will probably throw a monkey wrench to this entire project and it might shut it down. We want to make sure first everything is working properly as much as possible and there will be no major issues or no outbreak.
What's your indicator on the wastewater side? What's your coverage today?
Right now, the wastewater coverage is only around 25 to 30% of Metro Manila for sewerage. The rest is being handled by septage treatment.
So do you want to upgrade that septic treatment?
Actually, we're trying to upgrade our sewer coverage. That's part of the things that I'm trying to incentivize the two concessionaires. So once we do more projects for sewerage, if we expand it some, make it the coverage bigger, we can have more access to reuse water because that's one of the byproducts of a sewage treatment plant. I don't think you can do that for septage because there won't be enough water for you to really reuse that for septage. But for sewerage, there's enough water for you to convert and reuse.
During the session here, we talked a lot, or we have heard a lot about the climate change. And I think that is a perfect example. Okay, what happened to the people because of the climate change? And so we have to find the solution. And I think the solution is great. But we also have these, let's say, these smaller, mid-size and small companies who are maybe just have a technology. And I wouldn't say they don't care about the climate change, but, you know, they have good business because of it. But let's say they are not really focused on that. What do you say to them to take them with, to say, hey, the climate change is real. See it here. This is our solution. You have adapt also your technology, your process, how you the supply chain, things like that. Ensure that you can support us here. What is your message on them?
For the smaller water systems, probably they need to invest in new technology and they need to explore and not just rely on the usual suspect, the usual process, and broaden their horizon. That's part of what we did. That's one of the things that I pushed for, and that's why we were able to explore using water reuse. We also encouraged our concessionaires to look at other new technologies, go abroad, learn best practices abroad.
Is that Morse code?
That's a good example, because just yesterday, someone told me in a talk, there's always someone at the utility who's a gatekeeper for new technologies.
You shall not pass!
That's why they are so slow. That is for the entire world, for the entire industry.
That's also easy to say, but
it is. But if I am a tech supplier, I have the coolest tech on earth, what do I have to do to convince the utility how to come into the game?
You need to probably start smaller and show to them that it's working. I just want to go back about there's a gatekeeper of technology. I don't think there's a gatekeeper of technology. There's a lot of technology out there.
Not my words. I took them from the crowd.
Yeah, there's a lot of technology out there. All you have to do is go outside, listen, and explore, ask questions, and study other countries, their best practices. That's how you are able to learn more, and that's how they can improve themselves. They don't need to do it themselves. There's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Which country did you study?
We went to Japan, we went to Singapore, we went to the US, to Australia, all of these developed nations. We try to look at their best practices.
Did you realize that he didn't say Europe?
And I'm not going to make friends, but I hope you get more inspired by Japan and Singapore than by the US.
At that time, we're just starting right now. We focus first on our neighbors like Singapore and Japan.
Another topic which came up is really, the utilities, they have more and more capabilities, especially with the support from outside. What is the future role of the operator, of the EPC contractor? Do you really need them?
The government should not be in business, basically. Government has no business being in business. That's why we privatize things, is because we feel that it is the private sector that has more know-how, has more funding, and is more willing to take the risk to fix the system. The private sector is supposed to be more efficient. They will be able to provide the proper service to the consumers. That's my personal opinion, at least, that I don't think we should go back to the previous one. Going forward, most probably we'll rebid the contract if the concession expires.
When does it expire?
It's 2037 right now.
Okay.
And we started 1997. We should just keep on doing what we've done before, because I think government should focus on regulation and not being in business like this.
So you've seen the Xylem Evoqua thing, you've seen the Suez Veolia thing. Could you have a Manila Water Manila thing?
I think they're already also doing that. Manila Water is actually doing business right now in Saudi, Vietnam. They're already expanding into international operations. Maynila, I think they have some business in Indonesia, I think.
So there would be good synergies if they're then coming together, making one big Philippine companies?
No. I don't think they're going to be merging, but they might do business or get investments from other companies. Like Maynilad has an investor, a Japanese company called Marubeni. There's that synergy there. That's why they're getting Japanese technology as well to help them.
Sorry, I was trying to trick you with a tricky question. My last question is, you mentioned how the World Bank named you the most successful water privatization. What's the driver to that? Is it the fact that the Asian Development Bank is in Manila?
I don't think that's a factor at all. I think the biggest factor is the regulator. I have to toot my own horn here. It's really really important to have an independent regulator for the two concessionaires to be able to function properly. Because there's somebody breathing down their necks. There's somebody who's checking their performance. I'm checking their key performance indicators. I'm making sure that they're efficient, that they will not just spend on anything, and they need to spend on the things that are required, that they have to be prudent and efficient. Only those that are prudent and efficient can be recovered in their tariff. And of course, the number one is that they are able to recover their investments. Because if they are not able to recover their investments, they will not invest, and they will just stop and just run the concession to the ground.
So what is your outlook in 10 years? How many of these projects we will see wastewater directly treated to potable?
Right now, it's only 10 MLD, 10 million liters per day. We're targeting 100 million liters per day. And we're also looking into possible indirect potable reuse as well for certain areas, because it's more expensive to do direct potable reuse than indirect potable reuse. If there are areas that we can do indirect potable reuse instead of direct potable reuse, we are also exploring that right now.
Thanks a lot for stopping by. Enjoy the conference. Enjoy your win yesterday.
And congrats again for the 1.5 awards, or 2. You define it like you want.
Okay.
It was great to have you here. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I briefly mentioned it to introduce Patrick Lester. 2022 Water Company of the Year was Manila Water. Generally speaking, the Global Water Awards are one of the most prestigious awards given in the water sector, but among all the titles given during the ceremony, the Water Company of the Year is clearly the number one. That's something I discussed with Reinhard Hübner, the CEO of Ski on Water, as he was still enjoying his run as 2021 Water Company of the Year. To this date, that's still one of my personal favorite episodes of my podcast. When Manila Water won in 2022, their runner-up was Aqualia. And the runner-up position is something Aqualia knows quite well, having already been Evoqua's runner-up in 2018. So when Aqualia finally heard this...
To the winner of the Water Company of the Year for 2023, it's Aqualia.
I'm pretty sure it must have felt exhilarating. End of the suspense. We've been teasing you this entire show, telling you we would have the Water Company of the Year. You just saw it. That is Aqualia. And actually, we have a special guest from Aqualia. Björn, can you introduce our guest?
We have here with us Guillermo Moya, the head of Europe of Aqualia. Congrats so much for the award, Water Company of the Year. What does it mean to you? How have you celebrated? Did you have a great party yesterday?
First of all, thank you. Thank you very much. We are deeply honored and quite happy. This means a lot for us. Recognition for years of hard work from all our colleagues. Yesterday, when we received the news, I think we were a little bit surprised, but at the same time, a lot of satisfaction caused by the good work. Well, did we celebrate? Yes, a little bit.
We won! We won! We won!
Some of us had to prepare for today's interventions.
Sucks to be me right now.
So we had to get back to the hotel at a decent time. Yeah, the team did celebrate and we're quite happy. So thank you.
At least if you're back in Spain, that you will have a big party, all right?
Yeah, hopefully so. Okay.
You were a great speaker in the plenary this morning, so I guess you're part of the team which didn't party so much. You mentioned the years which led you to this. We have had on that show so far great tech companies which are stepping into new areas. We've discussed with public agency which is also on the utility end, and they explain how their emissions are evolving. Somewhat, they're taking you into a kind of sandwich. They are eating up and they're eating down into your area of the market. And still, you're the water company of the year. So you must have a special sauce which makes you successful in the middle of that sandwich.
There's never a special sauce, right? There's a lot of hard work. But in terms of how we add value to the water sector, I think we have a very unique proposal because we combine the proximity to our clients, and we are used to deal on a daily basis with more than 2,000 municipalities in 18 countries with 43 million people, final users. And that gives us a very good flavor of what's going on in the management of a water end-to-end water utility. But at the same time, we have the capacity to innovate, to design and to build water infrastructures. And that combination makes us unique in our value proposal. I guess part of the success that the award is trying to recognize is that we've been somewhat creative in our approach to offering an end-to-end water cycle service for our customers.
You said it clearly that one of the things is that you build, for instance, the complete infrastructure, things like that. Let us define a little bit. I mean, we have in our market, we have integrators, we have EPCs, engineering, procurement, and construction. We have operators. How do you see yourselves?
We define ourselves as a multinational water management company that is focused on the full end-to-end cycle of the water service. That means that we are active from the abstraction of water, the distribution of drinking water, for sure, the treatment for drinking water. We collect water in sanitation. We treat wastewater. We do desalination if needed. We do reuse when needed. And we also manage, we have the contact with the client. We have the customer management. And alongside with that, we can bring alongside our capabilities of design and construction, which are an add-on to our core business of the end-to-end water cycle. So that's a long definition, but this is how we position ourselves.
So you are the integrator, you are the EPC, and you are the operator.
Yeah.
So we have to find a new category.
It's an integrated water management company. That could be a good label for us.
Was Aqualia always designed that way, or is it an evolution?
Well, there have been some evolutions, but I guess that both spirits lived within us from the very beginning. We were pretty much devoted to this relationship to municipalities in the Spanish Iberian markets, in the municipal water concession business, where we had to be an integrated utility through this contractual way. But at the same time, we held the capabilities of our mother company, FCC, which was a construction company, and our specialization within the water infrastructure, where we have quite strong teams that can design and can procure and build water infrastructure all over the world.
But isn't there a change over the last years? If I remember your panel yesterday about the utilities, there was Aarhus Fund, because I have to say it right, because I'm a little bit from the north. What I found interesting is that they are able and allowed to invest in startups because they have to find other revenue streams. They have also more and more the capabilities in terms of engineering, in terms of procurement.
The example of Mekorot as well, which is stepping in the same kind of water.
Yeah. So isn't that becoming more and more, instead of a customer, a kind of competitor?
The whole world is changing. Probably now we are becoming more an integrative solutions developer. For instance, our design and build capabilities are especially needed when we are offering a more holistic product where we finance and when we operate long-term the assets. I guess that our approach is pretty much long-term driven. Many of the competitors in the sector are also trying to take this approach, which I think will add more value because the water industry needs to be planned and thought of in the long term, and water investments need to be deployed for the long term. There is no urgency that is good for the sector. I think that we all need to look with a long-term approach, and that I think will be the evolution of the sector. We are more and more investing now in digitalization of our networks that we manage, the networks that we own. We are investing in innovative solutions to generate bioresources out of wastewater. And that can only be done if you have a long-term view. If you have patience, if you have capital, and you have the technical capabilities. I think this is the future of the industry, at least for us.
May I ask one additional question to that?
No.
Please.
I'll allow it.
We have two systems in Europe. We have the British model, where we have just 17 privatized utilities. And we have, call it a little bit the German or French way, or however you want to call that, where you have thousands of of utilities. Which one will survive?
I think probably something different will survive. I guess the difference is not only marked by the fragmentation, but also by the degree of involvement of the private and public operators. We think that the winning strategy is that of a combination of the best of both worlds. Public and private-public partnerships will definitely solve many of the problems that water is posing now to
Berlin. I mean, we are sitting here in Berlin, and Berlin was struggling with these PPP over the last year. So, and the people went against us. So
they have to be fine over the last years, because PPPs have a bad rap because of what happens in the 90s, where we had huge PPPs which were pretty undefined and which were not the best way to address some very large infrastructure projects. What we've seen, and I think that there was a report from the World Bank last year, which was saying a lot of these development goals, a lot of these new types of projects should be done with PPPs, but PPPs of a reasonable side, which are a win-win on both ends. You cannot have too much profit margin on the private end, but you cannot have too much responsibilities either, that you have to have a balanced relationship. They don't want to cut you off.
I fully agree. And I think that there are way more good examples of PPPs than unsuccessful examples.
There are many, many, many examples of success of this around the world. Far more successes by a factor of exponentially than any failures along the way. It doesn't mean it's always perfect, but public-private partnership has proven itself to be a significant alternative. It's not the only alternative for funding, but it is one.
And we always have to learn from our mistakes. But I think that the clients, the customers, the public administrations, normally municipalities, are becoming more and more sophisticated in that end. And they know what to expect. Many times they have the political willingness and braveness to push for new models that combine the best of both worlds. I think this is the only way to overtake the flaws of a mixed model. There are many flaws in the public model, and there are many flaws in a fully private model. I don't think the model is important as long as there is a good collaboration. But the best way to promote that is PPPs, I guess.
Let me just try to get the facts straight. You mentioned 33 or 39 million inhabitants which you're serving.
Yeah.
33.
43.
That makes you the 9th largest operator of water in the world. I'm interested in the step before those PPPs. A municipality, an industrial, an end user has a challenge which they want to overcome. And in that conception phase, they call you and you come with clever ideas. How do you ensure that they really go to the end of the process and they leverage your financing capability, they leverage your service approach, they leverage your long-term approach, and they don't just do like a capex tender and the cheapest wins?
We are observing that municipalities are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they have a pretty good idea of what the problems are. I think it's in our side the responsibility to be close to them, to understand the problems. This is why I mentioned so much proximity. Because if you approach your customers in advance and you understand what is the problem that in any municipality they have, because sometimes it's excessive leakage, sometimes it's excessive or bad quality of the water, sometimes it's problem with non-revenue water, with invoicing, sometimes it's that they just want to modernize the water meter network and they want to introduce a smart metering. This is the type of problems that we have to understand, to listen carefully, to be quite close to the roots of those problems and try to propose creative solutions. And when we do that, the customers respond in a quite sophisticated way, and then we can compete. And we love competing.
I will never forget my example I had, that the utility was, talking about having kind of water as a service with the latest technologies, and everybody was expecting the tender. And then the tender was, a standard. Was just capex sales with the lowest level of technologies, and everybody was saying, okay, guys, you talked all day long about this, and this is the result, and I have to offer that. And if I offer you something different, which is better for you, for me, for the environment, but you will not accept that, I'm totally out. Isn't that a frustrating situation?
Yeah, every now and then you find that. But at the same time, there is a role to be taken by many advisors that the municipalities have. They are doing a very good job at trying to channel and structure in a proper way from a technical perspective the requirements that they want to put in the market. We are quite optimistic about the evolution of our customers. I mean, we see it in demanding market. We see it in Spain. We see it in France, in Italy. We also have some exposure in some other countries of Central Europe or in the British Islands, where we see the creation of new types of contracts that are trying to fulfill this technical requirement with the support of many participants across the value chain. Again, I think the world is becoming more sophisticated, and this is good for public administration. This is good for the customers. And this is for us a wake-up call to be as skilled and competitive as we can.
Let me scratch a bit that surface of this sophisticated approach, the customers and all the players in the value chain. There's a role for everybody, but this morning on your panel, you were sitting next to Susan Moisio. By the way, I had an awesome podcast interview with Susan Moisio. It's my weekly or monthly shameless plug. You should listen to it. Susan has thousands of water engineers working for Jacobs. Would that be a partner for you or a competitor?
That depends. We can find ourselves sitting in the same side of the table with them. We can see ourselves sitting on the other side of the table and them advising to our customers. We feel pretty comfortable with skilled companies and top-level companies in either side of the table. Our roads cross every now and then, and from different directions and in different angles.
And I like that. I like that answer because a similar answer we had off the record, unfortunately, from the two tech companies. We asked them off the record, hey, do you see themselves a little bit as competition? Similar as you asked.
Are you seeing what you're just doing? They did it off the record, and in the same show, you're bringing it on record.
Yeah, I do.
Nice of you.
Is that right?
Because it was just too cool, because he said, if we one day are competitors, that would be good if one day we are competitors. And I think it's similar here. I think more and more is about cooperation. So we should stop talking about competition. We should talk more about cooperation. Sometimes you are competition with Jacobs, sure. Yeah. But on the other hand, maybe the other project, you are just, cooperation with them to find a solution for a client. And that is exactly how we should look at this. Not only he's kind of, okay, he's a competition, I don't want to talk to him.
Definitely. Cooperation is key to the evolution of the sector, but competition is quite good. It brings the best from us, trying to excel at something against the ones that do it best is probably bringing the best from you. Yeah, the combination of cooperation and competition is going to move this sector forward.
Let's call it he is challenging you.
Yeah.
To become better.
Definitely, yeah.
Is that why you're developing France?
Well, the main reason for developing France is that we believe there is value to be offered to our customers there. We've listened to our customers in France, and we've offered a proposal that has been battle tested in France and is working, and we are humbly offering our services there, and we want to augment our capacity to be able to extend it to other countries, in France to other type of customers. And yes, in France there is competition everywhere. I mean, we found the same companies in many other places, and every now and then everyone is trying to make the best. So yeah, the reason for France is because there are clients that we believe are benefiting from our presence there.
We would have many more questions, and we can keep you for one more hour, but we have to be cautious of your time. There's a lot to do here at the Global Water Summit. As a closing thought, you express how Aqualia evolved over the time. I'm not asking you a pure crystal ball question because that's a bit too fluffy, but how do you see that evolution ongoing? What's happening in the next years?
Okay, that's a tough one, but let me give it a try. I think Aqualia, we are already an international water management end-to-end cycle company, but I think we want to become a more widely expanded company powered by renewable energy or low carbon sources, which is in the DNA of our existence. We are, by definition, by heart, a sustainable company that will keep fostering innovation and creativity without losing and always improving our proximity to customers, with a strong focus on efficiency and the excellence of our team.
Sounds like an interesting roadmap.
Absolutely. I think we have to follow this as well, right? So we have to follow all the companies we had today on our sofa. Thank you very much, Guillermo, and we will follow you definitely. I wish you a great party if you're going back to the team.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Talking of party, I will now try to chase down the organizer of the Global Water Summit, Christopher Gasson, to get his closing thoughts about everything which happened here in Berlin. So let's see if I can catch him.
We might be interesting. We're not so interesting for it to be worth you people standing up for all this time. So please, the people standing at the back, sit in those seats over there. You'll have a much better experience of the conference and you won't hate us by the end of it.
Catching Christopher right in the middle of the conference is a stretch. Indeed, he's the one pronouncing the opening words, then also setting the tone for everything else that would happen during the Global Water Summit. He's tend to be found moderating sessions or shadow moderating some more when his questions from his assembly seat challenge the status quo. We've talked quite a lot about the Global Water Awards so far. And guess who's on the scene, passing the prizes to the winners and shaking hands with the runner-ups? And at that stage, we're just halfway through the conference, which means more sessions to fire up and first findings to draw, as the closing plenary brings the entire conference towards its conclusion with, again, Christopher on stage acting at the same time as the editor of the most influential water publication, Global Water Intelligence, but also the MC that gives challenging thoughts a stage. But talking of his conclusions, I was in a mood to question them, and Christopher was kind enough to sit down with me and defend them while Björn strategically bailed out to catch a train. So Christopher, thanks for joining me. You're just off the closing plenary. You just closed the Global Water Summit 2023. If you had one sentence to summarize what just happened over the last 3 days, what would be that one sentence?
We are breaking through a brick wall here. I felt that I had global water intelligence for 20 years, and all that time it's really been about how can we get money into water as the central challenge. And talking to utilities, government agencies, and what have you, as well as the contractors at this event, it's been clear that nobody's applying the brakes. The expenditure on water infrastructure is accelerating at a time when one would normally expect it to be slowing.
Because of inflation.
Because of higher interest rates, because of inflation, because, people are concerned about the sort of cost of living and so forth, that traditionally spending on water has not been a function of need. It's a crazy thing. Historically, it's been a function of availability of funding.
So if funding was available, people would invest in water?
Right. So what I'm saying is that, historically, the way I've looked at the market, and, we do these market forecasts and, we get quite heavily involved in trying to understand CapEx patterns in this industry. And it's always seemed to me that the way it's worked is that if the capital can be made available, then it will be spent because the need is almost infinite. That paradigm seems to be changing, that we're seeing a number of countries, notably America and Saudi Arabia, but other countries are in a similar state, where there's actually no limit on the amount of money available. It just extraordinary amounts of capital that are being made available to spend. And that reflects the fact that we have probably crossed a boundaries where the sort of political awareness of water as one of the most pressing challenges of the 21st century has sort of finally broken through. It's not like we need to draw attention to ourselves to try and compete with other spending priorities. The climate is doing that for us.
How is that good news?
Now, there are some exceptions to that. I mean, the thing which I think is the biggest exception is in the developing world, where you have countries which are up against their spending limits. And even though there's a lot of money available from the international financial institutions, the fact that these countries are coming up against their sort of IMF limits of how much they can borrow means that large projects in these countries are being postponed or cancelled. Not because the money's not there, but because the governments of these countries don't want their utilities to be borrowing money with sovereign guarantees from international institutions, because it will upset things. And I suppose you could say that what there is a sort of bifurcation of spending, that you've got climate-driven water spending, which is beginning to take off. It probably, as I think you mentioned, it probably needs to be at least 100 times what it is if we're going to tackle climate change. But from a very low base, it is starting to increase at double-digit rate. And then there's the sort of SDG 6 side of things. Climate isn't a driver of SDG 6 spending in developing markets. Need of low-income communities to have good water and sewage services is the driver there. And that is the same regardless of climate change. We've got this problem of access to capital becoming an issue there in a slightly different way than it was.
In German, they have this pretty magical word, Jein. It's not yes, it's not no, it's in between. Yeah. And that is a bit my feeling, because I share your points that there is an unprecedented amount of money which is flowing into water. But the US example is pretty revealing to that extent, because the Biden administration plan, so the 111 billion, it's unprecedented. It's the biggest in the history. Yet if you look at the EPA number, which they're updating every 5 years, the need in the US is 580 billion just to bring the infrastructure back to the level it should be. During the UN Water Conference, the US did the biggest pledge on the scene during the plenary. They pledged $49 billion, but then those didn't figure in the UN water agenda. And the biggest pledge in the water action agenda comes from a company you know pretty well, which is called Global Water Intelligence. So the yes side would be, yes, something is happening and we can see it as the beginning of a wave. But the no side is we have to ensure
that wave is pushing, and it's not just a one-off.
What's happening in America is a little bit of a, I don't know whether it's a special case, but I believe the problem in America at the moment is not the availability of capital. We had our American Water Summit back in January. We had a special workshop for underserved utilities who are supposed to be accessing this huge amount of funding that's been available from Washington. And the big issue there was definitely how can these overburdened, underfunded utilities find their way through the sort of Washington maze to get the money when they can barely do their day job, let alone go through this sort of quite difficult grant application thing where you have to prepare projects which satisfy all the requirements of the funding, and you basically need to have a lot more sophisticated governance and management than a lot of these places have. So this is what I mean. The money's there, but the challenges are somewhere else, and there's no point in just piling up more money unless one's actually got that issue. And in the developing world, it's very definitely this question of there's plenty of money, but no bankable projects. Notwithstanding what I just said about the problem of debt ceilings, this issue of how do you get non-bankable utilities to access funding is the biggest challenge for SDG 6. And that's really at the heart of our pledge to the UN conference. And that what my thinking is, and this is why it turns out to be the biggest pledge in terms of delivering numbers, is that utilities are the only institutions that can deliver SDG 6 at scale. If you look at everywhere else, NGOs can do things with hand pumps, but it's going to take forever to make a difference. If you're actually going to get the big numbers in, you need to get the big institutions which deliver this in. And we're talking about people like Sabesp in Brazil, who are one of the largest utilities in the world. They're talking about delivering improved sanitation to 12 million people over the next few years. 12 million people is a huge number. There's no other institution, I think, that could consider doing that. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, let's get 300 of these utilities together, and between them, get them to pledge to deliver SDG 6 to 300 million people. And that will show what the utility sector can do. But it's a network for sort of inspiration, that what we find is that when you bring utility leaders from around the world, as we do here at the Global Water Summit, they have so much to share. Each of them have their own sets of problems and experiences. And when you put the two together, you can actually clear the way for action in a sort of quite exciting way for these people. What we're doing with our sort of 300 water leaders group is to bring these utility leaders together with the financial institutions, and they're terribly keen as well to help these utilities find their way through the financial sort of maze that they put between the utility and the money to make sure all their shareholders are happy.
Across the past 3 days, we've heard a lot the word private-public partnership. You explain how money will be connected to utilities and how that's the best way to bring SDG 6 at scale. What's the role of the third P, so the private sector, in that?
The straightforward business of the private sector providing the technology and building the infrastructure. But I think what you're really talking about is the operational expertise and the capital. And I think that, this is an interesting sort of question. Where countries are reaching their sort of borrowing limit, having a private company come in and do the work on their own balance sheet is an attractive thing, but there needs to be a number of sort of guarantees, possibly from the international institutions, to make it possible to operate in those circumstances. You can see that these organizations, such as Manila Water or Seno in Senegal, they are delivering at scale. And we had a company here, Agea, also from Brazil, which is now, I think, the largest private operator in Brazil, and it is the largest private operator in any one country, I believe. And they have 35 million customers, I think, now. They have been brought in to accelerate the delivery of sanitation to a number of cities in Brazil, most recently in the sort of Rio area. They certainly can do the goods, but there is this political dimension that still needs to be addressed, and that's a problem in some markets more than others.
It's very interesting that you mentioned Manila, and it's very interesting that you just explained what you just explained, because right before you, we had your double award winner for the Water Reuse Project of the Year and the Public Water Agency of the Year. I'm having a mix of the words, but that's the one. And we discussed exactly that, how they partnered with Manila and Manila Water, and how the role of the agency was also to have this kind of frame bringing the financing. So kind of the applied theory, which you just discussed. Christopher, actually, I can keep you for 2 hours.
Okay.
And we are in a relaxed position in sofa, so it could really last 2 hours. I don't want to steal you from the ending of your conference, but I still want to just wrap up the conference itself. You had 811 attendees, which I think makes it the most crowded Global Water Summit ever. Are you the happiest Christopher ever?
Well, it's one of these things, whenever I go to do one of these events, one always gets excited about what one can do next. And I think there's quite a lot that sort of came out of this. There's a lot more work.
So your next milestone is next year. You mentioned a Water Meets Finance event in New York.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to do a finance event in New York. I mean, that's on the assumption that we're able to find a venue and so forth. I think that
if you know a good building in New York, reach out to Christopher.
This is, as I said, this is the moment to be talking with the asset allocators, the real big money people in the financial world about water, because that simple message, 70% of climate change adaptation is about water. That is a huge potential market, or just demand on the financial sector, that I think is going to get people to sit up and say, hey, we need to pay attention to this.
I think that's the best possible conclusion. So thanks a lot for wrapping up Global Water Summit with me today. Thank you all for watching us. Until here, you've seen the Tech Idol, the Breakthrough Tech Company of the Year. You've seen incredible stories from Manila and the Philippines. We've had a good discussion with the Water Company of the Year, and I think we had the wisest conclusion there could be. Thanks a lot, and see you next year.
Sure, thank you.